My name is Nagle and I've written a book about the online culture wars and political online subcultures, and it's called Kill All Normies. The online culture wars are essentially a kind of replay of some of the culture wars of the 80s and 90s, around the time of Pat Buchanan, and of course the 60s. I make a lot of reference to those kind of previous culture wars because it's a lot of the same issues. It was all about kind of campus wars, the Western canon, racism, sexism, political correctness, sexuality, all of those kinds of issues. They were fought actually in what began as quite obscure online subcultures, and gradually throughout the course of the period of the book, they go from subcultural obscurity on places like 4chan and Tumblr and Reddit to actually kind of bursting into real life at the end, when it's actually erupting into riots on campuses, because the campus wars were absolutely central to the previous culture wars. If you ask them what they're about, they will say identity, civilization, European history, European civilization, pride. Its behaviour is not something that you would associate with tradition, for example. This kind of, anime, Nazi, porn-watching, video game obsessed, group of people who basically just terrorize women online, and, that doesn't sound like the makings of a great civilization to me, so in other words, like the way they behave is more or less the opposite to the things that they say they're about. Best, I think, to use the strictest definition, which is a white segregationist ideology, a white pride ideology, because the rest of the kind of whole milieu around the alt-right, which is the alt-light and the kind of MAGA hat wearing guys and people like that, who in many cases have actually kind of moderate enough views. They're just, they like being on PC and they like trolling people and so on. My worry is that those people are in some way providing cover for and giving numbers to people way to the right of them who are not trolling, who are not joking, and who have a pretty serious political agenda. The book also looks at the kind of battles that went on that were characterized, we'll say, on the left by a kind of style that came from Tumblr. I wouldn't say it was a kind of a left politics in any traditional sense, but it was some kind of a liberal cultural politics, and it was very concerned with kind of fluid gender identities and kind of playfulness around identity, and at the same time the online movements on the right were kind of defining themselves against what was happening in that world. So they would always use as a point of reference for the idea that, everything was going to hell, a screen grab of someone on Tumblr who, identified as some gender that they had just made up. And equally, those in that kind of cultural left world would look at what was going on online on the far right, and they would say, see, just as we said, the world is full of racists and sexists and bigots, and the entire society is racist and so on. So they were kind of mutually reinforcing, and over the course of this period, it kind of ramped both of them up in a certain way. Then what you had is the emergence of what's now called the alt-light. The most famous kind of person in that milieu would be Milo Yiannopoulos, and his campus tour really kind of brought this style of politics, this kind of trolly style of politics, into the mainstream. I mean, political correctness has been something that has annoyed the right for a long time. Now, I understand why that is, because it's a kind of dishonesty, but I also would take the kind of Freudian view that that taboos are part of civilization. That's why I would not call myself a cultural libertarian. Some of the people in the alt-light call themselves that. I think cultural libertarianism while I'm totally pro-free speech on, you know, in the legal sense, cultural libertarianism to me sounds like an ideology that basically means you don't really care that much about anything. You don't really feel that strongly about anything. We'll all just debate things and it doesn't really matter, and none of it will ever really, you know, change the world. Actually, the alt-right has been much smarter on that issue, because they've said, no, what we have to say will change the world. I wish that the left had that kind of confidence again, you know, that they have. The most direct influences on the book are Evgeny Morozov and Mark Fisher. I talk about Mark Fisher quite a bit actually in the book, and I reference Morozov a couple of times. More broadly, politically, I'd say the biggest influence would be somebody like Christopher Lasch. I think I would be probably closest to him politically. Yeah, I like what's happening around kind of dissident left perspectives that want to develop something that is different to the kind of cultural liberal individualism that is collapsing because it's sort of bankrupt.